Don't wait till the battle's over. Don't wait till the struggle ends. Shout now, shout now, right now. Shout now, shout now. Don't wait till you make it.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the PHILLIP Show. This is Philip. Grab your coffee. Listen, today, I was just talking to somebody else today, and it just went in line with what this show is really about. If you don't know, I'm a musician as well. And one of the things that I was talking to this person about was some times that we had back in the studio just sharing stories. Hilarious. But the journey of it all was really the discovery through music of finding your voice and finding your way and discovering really who you are through lyrics, as well as through life experiences. So today, here to challenge us with the question, who are you? And on the wave of his latest release, The Thinker and the Thought with Don Johnson and the Lost Order, welcome hip hop artist and lyricist, Jeremy Street. Jeremy.
Hey, how's it going, Phil? Thank you for
good. Absolutely. How are you?
I'm doing well, Just got through my little bout with COVID, so back to 100% now.
How was that? I know this isn't what the show was about, but how was it when you got it? Did you know?
It happened pretty quick, and then I really don't get sick too often, so it definitely came out of nowhere, a little bit, and then just had to get back to it. So,
wow. But yeah, so many people are like catching it and all that. Well, you're over it, and we're glad about it. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So I know that you're super excited because you just launched your musical project. So before we get into everything what made you want to release another project?
I kind of am forced to do this. It's part of who I am. So being able to collaborate with other people to do what I love to do and what they love to do, it's just a wonderful opportunity. So these kind of things just organically happen, and it's great to experience that joy with other people, the collaboration, the project, the love of the project, the love of the culture, all of it. So
one of the things that I love about your project and some of your lyrics is that it's very introspective. Is this project different than some of the projects that you worked on before?
Absolutely. I think a lot of that would have to do with the producer, Don Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
A whole different vibe compared to the other projects. I also feel like it was more kind of central to that vibe. And as you said, introspective. The thinker and the thought itself, that whole ideology is basically separating the thinker and the thought, not separating the thinker and the thought and realizing you're that person. So I had to do a lot of that, asking myself, who am I? So this project was different than the last. The other ones, there were a few recently that was, kind of cleaning out the closet with some projects that I had ideas for songs, people I wanted to work with, so on. So this was really like the first, all right, let's go.
Yeah. I would imagine, I would just imagine you, and I'll just pick you apart real quick. I would just, I would imagine you as, do you consider yourself a hip hop artist?
I'm not sure. I think I'm evolving out of that.
Okay.
Because hip hop has become so broad now. When I first started doing hip hop music in the late 90s or mid 90s, I would say, yes, I would consider myself hip hop. And now, because there's so many different variations of that, I now basically have to categorize myself as a lyricist. But yeah, I do hip hop music. Would I dabble in some other things, maybe some ska or something?
Some ska. Yeah. Well, which is interesting because one of the things that I love about the journey of discovering you is listening to your music and listening to the instrumentation and the lyrics, what you're talking about on top of some of the instrumentation. What I see some pictures in the background there. What influences you when it comes to music and kind of getting your own voice?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think early on in life, when I first got into hip hop music, I was very young, and it was kind of, in that early 90s hip hop scene, you know, East Coast, West Coast, all of that. Every region had a different perspective and culture, and so giving me the ability to speak on my life. That's how I started out. So my journey has always been about poetic. It's always been about emotional, and it's always been about tangible things in life. So I feel like I get the most of my inspiration from life. I use hip hop as a vehicle to express myself. I would express myself in many different other ways,
Yeah.
and I do, as I'm sure we'll discuss. But as far as the music goes, hip hop has been that. DJing as well has given me an opportunity to, you know, play house music and stuff. You know, there's lots of ways that I like to outlet, and I guess the general purpose of that is to figure out who I am. My influences have been specifically as far as people go. I would say, you know, my brother was a huge influence to me with music. My father was a huge influence with me in music. And then I started finding those mentors in my life, people that stuck out to me, that gave me that feeling, you know, where, you know, like Common and Talib Kweli, Black Star, you know, all of that, even in sort of, you know, West Coast, you know, all the things that were happening, you know, with Snoop and Dre and all of that. There's just so much influence from those individuals, those iconic people that were the pillars of this genre, or those people outside in life that have given me the opportunity. That's why, you know, some of my friends are my influences, because some of my friends gave me opportunities to get on stage and grab a mic.
Yeah.
So those people were super influential. Who am I? I have navigated through many different versions of the question. Where I'm at right now is I'm a father and trying to figure that out every single day. And I'm also just a passionate person about creativity. I'd say I'm a humanitarian. I love people. I love seeing people have epiphanies, aha moments, figuring things out. Just love when everything is blossoming and people are progressively coming together to solve problems that will benefit everyone else. You know, that's
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's definitely the goal, right? You know, like everything has a purpose and everything will have a meaning, and what you do, your mark, will help to positively impact a lot of people who are lyricists and poets and creatives just in general. But a lot of people write from personal circumstance and personal experience. As you were coming into your own when it comes to just growing up and just going through the throes of life, do a lot of your creative outlets, I guess specifically music, but some of the other ones, do they kind of mirror or act as an escape from things in your life and kind of give you that balance?
yeah, I would say so. I think pressure from day-to-day responsibilities we all have.
Mhm.
So we have to balance out those pressures by having some sort of release. So it's got to be a give and take, an ebb and flow. Balance is extremely important. And we're constantly balancing that change, right? So every time something changes and adds pressure to our life, we have to handle that, and it takes energy, and we have to grab positive energy from the places that give us that positive energy in order to take on the negative things or the pressures that come into our life. So in my opinion, I think it's a constant give and take, as I said. So what is it that makes you happy?
Mm.
You do a lot of things that make you happy. It makes the challenging things seem trivial. I feel like if you do things that are constantly adding negative pressures to your life, then you find it hard to find optimism.
Yeah.
So you don't have a collaborative of people around you to help you see that. So some
Yeah.
people as well.
Do you ever go through, you know, your journey, no matter whether it's music or otherwise? Because I guess you're not really the stereotypical, and I might be stereotyping, but you're not the
Go ahead, come on.
but you're not the stereotypical lyricist or hip hop artist, being non-African American, if you will. You know, so are there assumptions that people have about you that you kind of run up against, and you're just like, yeah, Yeah, here we go. Or, it doesn't have to be that, but just assumptions in general, because we're speaking about who you are, So that people just have about you that are just completely like way in like second, third, 15th field.
Yeah, I'm 41,
Oh,
and so growing up, when I was 12 years old, it was 1992, and that's the first time that I got in front of a group of people and displayed what I was calling poetry at the time to a hip hop beat, and eventually I did more of that. Um, so in 92, being a white kid in Jamestown, Ohio, which is where I moved to from Xenia, when my parents got divorced, I moved out to Jamestown. And being from Xenia, I'd already had a reputation in Jamestown because of how they associated people in Xenia versus, being out in the country in Jamestown. So I was already getting called names, and the fact that I listen to hip hop music, I have an older brother and sister, so he got me into some hip hop as it was, surfacing. And because I listened to that, there was all kinds of things. You would actually think the latter, right? You would think I would be in an environment where I
yep.
was getting, basically looked at as being someone who was going to take advantage of white privilege. But being in Jamestown, it was the opposite. I was actually being treated as if I was coming from a more ethnic area, and these people weren't able to accept that just because of the music I listen to.
Wow.
I don't get it, but I have a little bit of a comprehension based on the behaviors that were displayed to me during that time.
How did that change your perspective? Like sometimes when people experience stuff like that, they go hard in one particular direction, right? So did it change how you either viewed people or you viewed yourself at all?
It planted a seed for sure.
Mm.
Gave me an opportunity through the next, decades of my life that incrementally got me into a scenario where I now was understanding of some of the, I just can't say understanding, man, because I don't, right? But I was more aware,
Mhm.
and it, yes, is eventually gotten me to a point where I am a enthusiast about eliminating that.
Yeah.
Um, but where to begin? I have no idea, man. But I
Yeah.
will say that was definitely a factor. I think now, because I have put a lot of work and effort into giving myself the ability to be progressive as far as how I handle myself, my professional life, all of those things has now gotten me to a point where it's the inverted U. Now I'm on the other side of that spectrum where I'll go into a conversation with people and they think that I grew up in a privileged neighborhood and went to college and all these kinds of things. And, that's not the case. So people do have a ability to judge a book by its cover. It's human nature, I think.
Yeah.
But we develop the ability to not let that be the end all be all and dive into who the person is. I think is where you really find the answer to that question, or in watching their actions. So
I think one of the interesting things about you is that even with people listening and watching either your videos or listening to your music, watching this, you can still stereotype and perceive. But you're a pretty well-rounded dude. Like you have daughters, right?
I have a 14-year-old daughter, yes.
14-year-old daughter.
Two little boys,
Wow. Huh?
and two little boys, 7 and 9.
Wow. So you're a dad and you can cook.
I've been known to whip up a few things in the kitchen, yes.
So one of your creative outlets, listen, I'm going to show you this. You guys at home, I made this for him just for the show. Look, boom.
Yeah, nice. Oh, dude, I love that. I want that kid bad too, by the way.
so so you are you're just a creative and you're talented. How did you get into cooking? Because you do both very well and you have careers in both. So how did you, I'm just curious, how?
Well, I stepped into the restaurant world in retail, actually in general. I stepped into retail. My first job, I was a janitor when I was 16, like job where I got a paycheck. And then I went into retail after that. And I just never left retail, which is really easy to do. Retail is typically a lot of people who are not from money. So we hustle. And the people that do really well in retail usually are really good at hustling. They have people skills, they have work ethic, there's, you know, just a sales mentality to it as well. And tend to find that the majority of people that do really well in restaurants and find lives in restaurants typically have some sort of outside hobby in some kind of creative environment. So that has just been an ongoing thing. And in being in that, at one point in time, once I kind of grew up a little bit, I guess, but I was still acting like a immature young man at that point in time. But aside from the drinking and all of that, I just started applying the creativity to the food and getting positive feedback. So asking questions really was what set my trajectory. And I had a great mentor who I work with currently, and been a voice of reason for me as well. I find mentors in my life, and I find people that I utilize as resources that give me what I need. And he gave me the answers to the questions. And typically that was, I don't know, let's try it out. So I developed courage in that, where I would start to, you know what, I'm going to do this with this dish. I'm going to come up with this. Why can't we do it this way? And I would start to find a way. And through all of that, the research and trial and error, just got some skills with it, and had an opportunity to work with some amazing people who, you know, set me on that course. People who have James Beard Awards, people who graduated from, you know, like CIA and stuff. So just being around those people just really helped me in that environment. So.
Wow. Do you think that some of the, I guess, the skills in your perspective when it comes to cooking, do you think it's kind of the same perspective when it comes to music? Or is it different?
Answering off the hip, I would say they're very similar. The fact that I feel like ingredients, you can articulate ingredients with ingredients. You can cook rustic, you can cook Southern style, you can cook refined, you can do, you know, so many different various sous vide, you can do just all kinds of different ways of cooking. I like to think of it as like discipline, right? So just like martial arts, everyone has this temple that they perform in, and they practice the 10,000 hour concept of practicing perfection. You know, that really is what it is every single day. So adding that creativity and that flair gives us the ability to flex those other areas. But yeah, I would say food and any kind of art like that would go together, because I feel like that's what it is.
Yeah. So what would you say your goals are? I mean, you're talented in, you know, clearly a lot of things. So what are your goals?
I have a lot of goals. But in general, I would say my goals are, how can I be more impactful to the community? How can I have legacy in that impact? Exemplify the qualities that my children need to see in order to give them the ability to get through the tough times in their life that they're going to come across. And to be able to get myself to a point where I can help people financially or motivationally, or any kind of way of being a good resource. Dave Chappelle really inspired me with this Gym City Shine thing, man. I made a real big impact on me. And I almost kind of thought of it as, wow, you know, a human being has the ability to step up and be like, yo, we need to do something together. The community needs to come together.
For
And
just while you're there, for the people who may not be from this area, can you explain what Gym City Shine is?
so the Gym City Shine was Dave Chappelle uh, putting together a concert for downtown Dayton. And it was all Dayton residents. You couldn't get tickets if you weren't a resident of Dayton. And he brought Chance the Rapper and Talib Kweli and Thundercat, and had Stevie Wonder, like just all of these people, Jon Stewart, you know, all these people coming in town to stand behind him and say enough is enough. You know, we got to come together. The tornadoes had just happened, shooting had just happened where 9 people lost their lives, and so many victims outside of that, the ripples of that all the way to the edge of the pond. And he stepped up to that challenge and said, you know, like, we need to come together, and it was dynamite. And since then, I've seen more connective tissue of Dayton coming together and working together in such an amazing way. It just inspired all of us, man. It was an amazing thing. So,
Do you think that's the key? I know there's a lot of unrest right now. Do you think the key is, I guess, to the unity puzzle is really laying things aside and just coming together?
I'm not really sure. I know what my role can be, and I think that for the first time in my life, I've had a really good, clear message, you know, go resonate through me to just try and be the best me that I can be. Does that mean that every day I'm accomplishing that or achieving that? Absolutely not. Awareness is first. You know, I quit drinking almost 7 years ago, and it is true. You know, first step of that is denial. You know, you realizing that you're an alcoholic is denying it. So me trying to think that I'm doing something impactful, I could tell myself that all day long. I could write songs all day long that don't have any value. That's why my music is different than, you know, what you would typically find in mainstream. Is my POV is not to duplicate hip hop. I grew up when hip hop was being created and established, and I know that individuality in hip hop and your style and your martial art is, like I did that when I said martial art, is your technique, and that is me figuring out my technique.
What would you say to the listeners of this new project?
This was a real opportunity for me to write some things that were new right now. We were going to release this in, I want to say last winter or the spring. Actually, yeah, we started doing it in January, and I wanted to release it in the spring, and life happened, and all kinds of things just kind of set things back. We went from being 3 tracks to 6 tracks to 10 tracks, you know, to 9. And then it really just kind of evolved. As it started to get to the pinnacle, it was like summertime, and I was listening to some of the tracks, and it's a different vibe. It's a very chill kind of, maybe a little dark, you know, old school detective kind of, you know, vibes to it. And I was like, man, I do not want to drop this in the summertime. This is zero place. So it worked out that we drug it out. We did some things to it that was allowed it to mature. So it didn't sound like a 2005 mixtape. More so, you know, had some dynamic, right? So I used that term a lot. I was like, I just don't want it to sound like a 2005 mixtape.
Wait, hold on. I might have had a mixtape in 2005. Wait a minute. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm glad that it progressed and it got to the point because it became what it became. But this one really gives, I think, a little clarity about how I feel about the government and their impact on all of the things that are happening. I'm type 1 diabetic, so I know firsthand how, you know, the pharmaceuticals and all the things. I hate the fact that that kind of thing is happening to us, and that we're off to the side of the road making TikTok videos and you know, all these things instead of paying attention to the important topics that need to be addressed. So a little bit of that comes out, a little bit of my dualities, my different personalities of, you know, being business savvy or being into hip hop or being, you know, the culinary person, like all those things. There are some tracks in here that explain all of that as well. So yeah, it's just a kaleidoscope of Jeremy, the thinker and thought, which is crazy. It's, you know, I always tell people it's like the 4th of July up here, and it's like a retirement home coming out. So
A retirement home. Dang. So one last question. You are continuously, like you were talking about, on your journey to continue to define the question, who are you? For again, for the people that are listening, what is one thing that you always go back to help you continue to define that?
I think that changed over time, but right now I could say simply my kids. It's just a different thing having people looking at you. What's he gonna do? What's when something happens, they're looking to see how I respond, and they're checking me on my integrity, and everything that I teach them is, you know, potentially what they will exemplify. So I'm literally looking at my job, how I'm doing as it goes, and blocking outside data, people telling you how it's supposed to be done. It's all the instructions are right there. Just literally watching how that goes down. So that, I think that's been my mind there to answer that.
Wow, that's good stuff. Integrity is I mean, that's a nugget right there. Yeah, that's just, yeah, that's a big one. Well, Jeremy, thank you so much for coming. I'm so glad that you're over COVID.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, and much success to the thinker and the thought. I'm sure it's going to keep many of us thinking and wondering, you know, have we defined our journey regarding who we are? You know, I definitely think that is something to consider daily. So thank you for that challenge.
Of course, absolutely. Yeah, you're welcome for that challenge.
I know, personal homework. Thanks.
For having me on the show. Really appreciate that. Thank you so much. And shout out to, you know, the team, everybody, you know, with the whole album, you know, Lost Order and Don Johnson and Fatty Lumpkin, and, you know, Justin Herman, all the guys that we worked together with on these projects, and the Rose and Sal and Yellow Springs, you know, doing all of the shows there as well. So, you know, much respect to all those people impacting Dayton in a positive light. Keep working together.
Yeah. Thanks, Jeremy. So, wow. So who are you? Make sure that you go pick up the album, The Thinker and the Thought. But more importantly, make sure that you listen to what Jeremy was talking about. You know, your integrity. People are watching. You define who you are by your responses to tough choices, to challenging situations, and you come out stronger once you continue to look at that and define your role as you move forward. So, as usual, you are the best you in the world. Stay encouraged, and we will see you next time here on The PHILLIP Show.
Don't